it's a particle system. Yeah, no. It took me to the point of writing this script that I realized that I could have done a lot of this with particles. A lot. But 3 sentences in, yeah, it probably wouldn't have worked the same. This gives you more control over animation, sorting layers, colors. Yeah, I know you can do particle colors, but I've got an extra sprite in the center for it to be white, so hey, it's something, right? And a few other things that aren't particle system friendly that I'll remember as I go along, probably. So, let's call this fireflies, dust, very light, particle-ish things. The next step in filling out my levels with random details to make it feel like it's got a lot more going on than it does. First off, the level manager script. All I did in there was add another color for I'm going with fireflies in my game. And the firefly prefab. The firefly itself is animated. Animated objects don't like to be moved after the fact, but they don't mind you moving their parent object, so that's what I did. The animation just goes from about the lower right to the top left corner of the screen. Really simple. Grow in, shrink out, a little wobble in the center. You will notice that I have unused frames at the beginning of the animation. Part of the script sets each firefly to play at a different speed, so that dead time also gives a random stagger before another one seems to respawn. And the last frame of the animation has an event on it that resets for a new firefly. This object also has a child sprite that I left white for a hotter glow look, otherwise it would have just been a colored blob moving around the screen. Just make sure you change the sorting layer to be higher than its parent so it renders on top. That fly uses a script called firefly child. You can see that it requires access to the parent game object and the sprite renderer of the white center sparkle of the firefly. We'll get to that later. The parent object also has its own script called firefly parent attached to it. It's simpler of the two, so we'll start there. First off, this whopping 21 lines of code is way longer than it has to be. I like to be able to tell what I was doing the next time I look at code, so I break things down into variables instead of having everything done in one line that looks more like a paragraph. That being said, I've got variables for the transform of the player called follow target, and a couple of floats for the new X and Y positions. Follow target gets the transform of the player, aptly tagged player. We randomly assign new random positions based on where the player is. In my case, plus or minus 10 of the player works pretty well. And we just apply them to our firefly parent object. We then randomly rotate it in the 360th degree range. Doing this all on the parent allows us to move and rotate our already animated fly child object somewhere around the player without any issues. Now let's look at the firefly child script that we have on our animated sprite. The variables, we need to access a level manager script, the parent game object lovingly called Mama, the sprite renderer for the creamy white center sprite, the animator of our firefly, the sprite renderer of our firefly, a float for our new Z position, and a string for the name of our sorting layer. In start, we find the level manager script, get the renderer for our firefly sprite, assign our sprite's color to the color given in the level manager. After that, we randomize the speed of the animation by grabbing the sprite's animator component and assigning it to a speed in the random range. For this example, it's 0.2 to 0.5. This next part is to assign a random Z position and corresponding sorting layer to the sprite. In my level, the background is at 15 and the foreground ends at about negative 5.5 on the Z. So I went a little under those values so everything can potentially have something floating in front of it. Based on the random position, I have a big if-else chain going. Based on the values, I assign a sorting layer variable to the corresponding sorting layer name. Your level will vary. I then assign that to the sprite and the white center. This could have happened in the if statement, but that would have been a lot more repetitive code. last step in positioning is to assign the random position to the Z position of the firefly sprite. The last block in the script is the restart go routine. First, it instantiates a new prefab of its parent called Mama, then destroys its own parent. Going back through this, I'm now iffy on calling it Mama and having it kill its own parent, but it works. Depending on how you set this up, you'll have different effects in your spawns. As it is, this will spawn a little outside camera range, so you'll potentially have some ahead of you when you start moving. But I've got a delay at the beginning of the animation that will slow down their rate in front of you as you move, so you'll be passing them as the animation starts. You can play with their spawn range and rates to see what works best for you. Personally, if I'm running along, I feel they'd be distracting, so I'm happy with them having to catch up to the player once they slow down or stop for a while. I thought about adding code that would restart them if the player got too far away, but decided against it. That seems like piling on and would add a bunch to the update to check every frame. I don't know what else I'm going to have going on, so I don't want to push it. Another feature you may want is randomized animation clips. I was going to do that originally, but with the random rotation, position, and speed, I didn't think it would really add much, unless you want a random loop-de-loop in there. As always, the count is overkill just to see everything in this video, and will be toned down as things progress. What? You're still here?